Good day. Welcome to today's lesson on English Home Language. My name is Mr. Anker, and today we will be specifically looking at the drama contextual questions for paper 2. Now, this is what we'll be looking at today under the CAPS curriculum, reading and viewing, and the various components of reading and viewing that will be addressed in this lesson. So, our lesson will start with drama terminology, basic analysis of the drama, how to approach the question, and then various answering techniques. This lesson will focus on the following aspects: understanding literary concepts and terminology, how to identify and explain literary devices, and to interpret literary texts to answer questions appropriately. Acquiring reading skills, recognizing and understanding how to respond to questions based on the question verbs, using the correct vocabulary to respond to literature questions, and applying techniques to answer these questions. Here are some of the keywords that we need to know when writing the paper. Evaluate the effectiveness, to examine the pros and cons of the issue and make a judgment of the statement in the question. Comment on the appropriateness, to examine the quoted lines or statement and then express your opinion or reaction based on your understanding of the play. Comment on the significance, to examine the quoted lines or statement and then explain its importance in your understanding of the play. Account for, give a reason for the statement in the question. Critically discuss, which is to weigh up the strengths and weaknesses of an idea or statement and examine it in detail. Critically comment, to make logical connections between ideas and to offer your own perspective based on a thorough evaluation. Validity, to determine how truthful a statement is in order to assess its credibility. Justify, to give reasons to prove how reasonable a statement is. What you should know and be able to do. You should know the questioning verbs and how to approach a contextual question. You should be able to provide answers on the drama holistically and not just on a specific extract. You should know the drama extremely well and the basic aspects related to the drama, such as setting, characters, themes, key quotes, and the plot. You should know that placing the extract in context means that you must refer to what happened prior, before, to this point in the drama. These are some of the critical errors that learners made when writing paper 2. Lower order recall questions such as place the extract in context were poorly answered since candidates were unable to identify the context of the extracts, so they did not know the play very well. Many learners did not read the questions in their entirety, so the complete question that only answered a specific aspect of the question, and the precise requirements of the questions were often ignored. Questions that invited learners to discuss how certain lines influence their response or attitude to a character were poorly answered. Learners' limited vocabulary meant that certain words were misunderstood and the responses were not appropriate in the context in which the words appeared. Many learners used language carelessly. Capital letters were not used for proper nouns. Titles and quotations were not correctly punctuated, and the apostrophe continued to be ignored by most. So remember, the apostrophe is only used for contraction or possession. In some cases, basic plot details were not known and characters were incorrectly identified, which suggested that candidates had not read the prescribed text. There was an over-reliance on summaries and film versions of the texts. These are some of the skills that you will need in order to write your paper 2. Now, before we start looking at question examples and at interpreting the texts, let's take a quick commercial break. Welcome back. Now, let's look at some drama terminology that will be very important when answering the questions. Atmosphere is the feeling created by the description used in the play. Attitude, the feeling expressed about a situation or a person. This question should be answered by stating the noun, so the attitude, and then the feeling. For example, the child enjoys, the painter is excited. Imagery, to create vivid pictures or sensations in the reader's mind by the use of descriptive language. Symbolism, the use of symbols to represent ideas or qualities. Theme, an idea that recurs or pervades a work of art or literature. For example, in Othello, the theme of jealousy is prevalent. In Hamlet, we've got the theme of corruption. And then in The Crucible, the theme of mass hysteria is evident. Very important, not identifying the relevant content or key terminology and not understanding common words could impede on your overall performance. Stage direction, an instruction in the text of a play indicating the movement, position, place, so the body language or tone of an actor or the sound effects and lighting. This is a very popular question in your contextual for the drama. Foreboding, a feeling that something bad will happen, to be fearful or apprehensive. Irony, the expression of meaning by using language or ideas that normally signifies the opposite or appears contradictory. Dramatic irony, irony inherent in speeches of characters where the audience is aware of a fact, event, or truth, but the characters are unaware. So the audience is aware and the characters are unaware. Foreshadowing, seen as a warning or an indication of what is to come in the play. Now, let's analyze some of these texts on a basic level. First, we'll be looking at Hamlet. The setting is Denmark. The primary setting of the play is Elsinore Castle. The major characters are Hamlet, Claudius, Gertrude, Polonius, Ophelia, Laertes, Horatio, the Ghost, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and Fortinbras. The plot. Prince Hamlet seeks to avenge his father's murderer, King Claudius, which is his uncle. His internal struggle with morality, revenge, and indecision as he seeks to ensure the validity of the ghost's claims leads to the deaths of multiple characters, including his own. At the end of the drama, the entire royal family dies, leading to Fortinbras from Norway to ascend the throne. The major themes: revenge, madness, loyalty and honor, corruption and decay, action versus inaction, and appearance versus reality. The conflict. At the heart of this conflict is Hamlet's indecision about how to fulfill the ghost's command to kill Claudius, who has usurped the throne and married Hamlet's mother, Gertrude. The tragic hero is Hamlet. His tragic flaw or his hamartia can be seen as his inability to act due to his strong moral compass. Now, the next drama we'll be looking at is Othello. The primary setting is Venice. The major characters are Othello, Desdemona, Iago, Cassio, Emilia, Roderigo, and Brabantio. The plot. Othello is a Moorish general, which means he's of African descent, is manipulated by his envious lieutenant, Iago, into believing his wife, Desdemona, is unfaithful, leading to jealousy, tragedy, and the murder of Desdemona. Upon hearing the claims against Desdemona were untruthful, he orders the death of Iago and then commits suicide as a means of redeeming himself. The major themes: jealousy, misogyny and patriarchy, prejudice and racism, honor and reputation, appearance versus reality, love and trust. Conflict. The major conflict in Othello is the internal and external struggle caused by Iago's manipulation, leading Othello to mistrust Desdemona and ultimately succumb to destructive jealousy. The tragic hero is obviously Othello. His tragic flaw or his hamartia can be seen as his jealousy, as this causes him to be easily manipulated by Iago. Now, let's go to Salem and the witch trials, the crucible. The setting is Salem. We often find that the play is set in Reverend Parris's house, the proctor's home, the courtroom, and the jails. The major characters: John Proctor, Elizabeth Proctor, Abigail Williams, Reverend Hale, Reverend Parris, Judge Danforth, Deputy Governor Dan Hathorne, Mary, Thomas, Anne, and Ruth Putnam, Betty Parris, and Tituba. The plot: in the crucible, mass hysteria grips Salem as accusations of witchcraft spiral out of control, fueled by personal grudges and deceit, leading to tragic outcomes. John Proctor has an affair with Abigail Williams, which results in her obsession. She uses the hysteria of the witch trials to falsely accuse Elizabeth, John's wife. This leads John to exposing the truth of his affair. Owing to the unjust court system, John is then prosecuted for witchcraft, and he ultimately dies, choosing his reputation over his life. The major themes: private vengeance, honor and reputation, guilt and redemption, mass hysteria, theocracy and Puritanism, the individual versus society. The conflict: the false accusations of witchcraft and how it is used as a vehicle for personal vendettas, and the mass hysteria causes the major conflict in the play. This leads to the deaths of many falsely accused Salemites. The tragic hero is John Proctor. His initial lust for Abigail is his fatal flaw, his hamartia. However, it is the Puritan society and its unjust legal system that causes his demise. Now, we've learned enough about John Proctor and the Salem witch trials. We'll be back after this short commercial break. Welcome back. Now, let's look at some ways of which we're going to approach the question. So, before we approach the question, let's look at some common problems. Learners often misinterpret the question verbs and do not know what is expected of them. The responses should be kept concise and focused. Discourage lengthy, rambling answers. You must confine your responses to the parameters set by the question and only include the most relevant points. Questions that ask learners to place the extract in context require them to focus on the events that occur immediately prior, so before the extract. These events must have direct bearing on the situation that is depicted within the extract. Remember, you must consider the mark allocation in your response. So if it's asking for 2 marks, do not write an essay. Do not produce a heavily worded, muddled response. Be distinct and precise. If learners are asked for their response or their attitude, they need to mention an emotional feeling that is evoked by what has been described and then explain it. A critically comment on question requires learners to provide an evaluation and an opinion over and above the meaning that is conveyed in the text. When a question requires learners to use the extract as a starting point, they must first refer to what is presented in the extract and then provide details from the rest of the text. When asked to refer to the play as a whole, learners must incorporate material from elsewhere in the text. These are some of the things that you have to know from grade 10, 11, and 12. This is how your question paper will look. It will consist of 80 marks. You will be required to answer questions from 3 sections. You must answer 2 seen poems and a compulsory unseen poem for 30 marks. Then you are going to be expected to write a literary essay as well as do a contextual question on a different genre. So, one question will be the literary essay. If you decide to do the novel essay, you must do the drama contextual, which is what this specific lesson today is preparing you for. The same is true vice versa. Thus, you must have one essay and one contextual from a different genre. It is important to ensure that your answers correspond to the mark allocation. So if it's a 2-mark question, do not write an essay. Now, what you need to know before approaching the question. The contextual question consists of 25 marks. To revise for this section, you must know the text extremely well. Note that there should be 2 extracts, and some questions may refer to both these extracts. Read the instructions carefully and take note of the lines of paragraphs referred to in the question. Knowledge of the entire drama is essential in answering the contextual. For example, the first question on an extract assesses whether you can place the extract in context. For example, when does this happen in the play? And what has led to this moment? Structure your answer using the Peel method. So remember, that is point, evidence, right? And then also an explanation. So often you will find, and a link. So often you will find that your evidence and your explanation will be incorporated into similar sentences. The contextual checklist. The title of the play and the name of the playwright must be known. The plot or the storyline, the setting, the role of each character, relationships between the characters, character development and growth, protagonist and the antagonist, the themes and the messages, the meaning of words in context, the figures of speech and the effectiveness of its use, the irony and dramatic irony, the important quotations. So these are all the crucial elements that you need to know when you sit down and write your examination. Now, the first drama we'll be looking at is Othello. This is an extract from Act 4, Scene 1. Please, very important, do not watch film adaptations of the drama, as they often steer off the source material and the original drama. This will gravely impede on your overall performance in Section C. So, this is an extract from Act 4, Scene 1, and this is the question. Refer to lines 2 to 3. Handkerchief, confessions, handkerchief. Discuss the significance of the handkerchief in the play as a whole. So we are looking at specifically the function of the handkerchief, right? The point. So we are using the PEE or the Peel method, right? The handkerchief is used as an ocular proof by Iago to convince Othello of Desdemona's adultery. So it's ocular proof by Iago that convinces Othello of Desdemona's adultery. The evidence and the explanation. It was the first gift that Othello had given to Desdemona as a token of his love. Iago mentions that he has seen the handkerchief in Cassio's possession. Later, when Emilia reveals that she had stolen the handkerchief on Iago's instruction, Othello realizes how gravely he has wronged Desdemona and kills himself as an act of penance, so as a redeeming act. So the point we have in pink, and then so refers to the use of the handkerchief in this context. The evidence and the explanation elaborate on its use in the past, the first love token, and then the future, which leads to Desdemona's death, as it is used as evidence of the infidelity. So look at how I refer to it in context of the play as a whole. Next, would bear your fortune like a man? Is Iago's assessment of Othello's behavior as being unmanly at this point in the play justified? Motivate your response. So you will not be credited for stating just the yes or the no. Marks are awarded for the motivation. The term assessment refers to a judgment made about someone's character. Focus on this point in the play. So, the point. Iago implies that Othello is behaving in a feeble and unbecoming manner for someone of his stature by falling into a trance and losing his control of his mental and physical faculties. So this is the explanation and the evidence, he is no longer the controlled and commanding general of the Venetian army. He has allowed his jealousy and insecurities to weaken him. He has lost his dignity, nobility, and authority, all that had made him the epitome of leadership. 3 marks for any 2 ideas well discussed. Now, if you were the director of a production of Othello, how would you instruct the actor to deliver these lines? So we'll look at the lines now. Pay specific attention to body language, that's your first mark. Tone is your second mark, and motivate your instructions. So the motivation would be your third mark. So the lines are, work on my medicine, work. Thus credulous fools are caught, and many worthy and chaste dames even thus all guiltless meet reproach. What ho, my lord, I say, Othello. So, how would we stage direct this? So, firstly, let's look at the body language. Iago might stand over Othello's prone body, his arms folded in satisfaction as he triumphantly looks down at him. So, his arms folded. We are dealing with physical actions here as part of the body language, right? Then the motivation, the fact that Othello lies at Iago's feet is a great victory for Iago because it signifies his superiority or power over Othello. Then his tone. Iago's tone might be gloating, rejoicing, or triumphant. Motivation. Iago is pleased that Othello is suffering and that Othello has been reduced to a state of helplessness. Iago also relishes the idea that he has tainted Desdemona's reputation. So you have to refer to all 3 aspects to be awarded the 3 marks. Then, refer to lines 32 to 34. A horned man's a monster and a beast by Othello. And there's many a beast then in a populous city, and many a civil monster. Comment on how Othello and Iago's views on marriage influence Othello's actions later in the play. So we have to refer to later in the play and their views on marriage. So comment on refers to expressing your opinion on a specific issue from the play. In this answer, you must refer to the requirements of the extract and events that occur later in the play. So, the extract context. So, firstly, we are looking at it in the context of the extract, and then we're going to look at it later in the play. So, in this extract, Othello's reference to horned men alludes to men having been chuckled by their wives. Iago's repetition of the word many implies that adultery is a common occurrence. Late in the play, this view influences Othello to believe Iago's lies about Desdemona. Othello is unwilling to accept that he should just accept Desdemona's betrayal, which intensifies his determination to punish her. Ultimately, he will kill his innocent wife because of Iago's insinuations and manipulations. So, we've looked at it from this extract and we've answered it later in the play. Then, let's look at the crucible. Remember, once again, do not watch the films and think that you can just by watching the film answer the contextual questions. You have to read the play very well. Explain the story in line 2 that Mary Warren has come to tell the court. So remember, explain is to make clear the meaning of something by describing it in more detail. So, Mary's story is that the girls have been lying to the court. So this is the point. We're using the PEE method again. She admits that she and the girls have never seen any spirits and that their behavior were only sport. She has informed Danforth that Abigail was aware of the puppet used to accuse Elizabeth of witchcraft was made by her, Mary. She also claims that when the girls fainted in court, they were just pretending or sporting, as she says. How has Paris contributed to the current state of affairs in Salem? For 3 marks. How means in what way? Then, the current state of affairs refers to what is presently happening. In this context, it would refer to the Salem witch trial. So how has Paris contributed to it? The point. Paris responds to the girls dancing in the forest and the rumors of witchcraft by calling Reverend Hale to investigate the presence of witches in Salem. Evidence and the explanation. Once Hale confirms the rumors, Paris encourages the girls to identify suspected witches. This contributes to the establishment of the witch trials and the ensuing hysteria. The point. Furthermore, by his involvement in the trials, Paris appears to be helping the village rid itself of evil. Evidence and explanation. And he actively uses his position of power to salvage his reputation and maintain credibility in Salem. 15.3. Refer to lines 4 to 5. To God, every soul is precious, and his vengeance is terrible on them that take life without cause. Discuss the irony in these lines. So remember, irony occurs when one expresses something using language that normally signifies the opposite. Okay? In this context, there is irony due to Danforth's hypocrisy. So, the point. Danforth is reminding Abigail that there must be a valid reason or a cause to condemn someone to death. So that is the point. The evidence and the explanation. He wants her to consider her accusations carefully because the consequences are dire. However, so from here onwards, we are looking at the irony, right? However, it is Danforth who is responsible for sending many innocent people to their deaths without a fair trial. He is not an evidence and the explanation. He's not even prepared to listen to evidence that contradicts the girl's accusation. So that is what is ironic about his actions. Now, I think we have dealt with enough of the witch trials. So let's quickly take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back with the rotten state of Denmark. Welcome back. Now, let's look at an extract from Hamlet and some contextual questions thereon. So in this specific extract, in Act 4, Scene 7, we are dealing with Gertrude informing Laertes that his sister has drowned. So he has now arrived at Denmark at Elsinore Castle, and he realizes his father has passed, and now he also hears that his sister has drowned. So, question 11.5. Refer to line 3. From Hamlet, who brought them? Account for Claudius's reaction in this line. So, remember, for this question, you should firstly identify the reaction. So, how is he reacting? And secondly, then give a reason for Claudius's reaction. So, the reaction. Claudius is astonished, shocked, and dismayed to learn that Hamlet is back in Denmark. So, Claudius initially thought that Hamlet had died, right? Because he sent him to his death with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, so that Hamlet would be executed by the English king, but then he managed to escape that and hop on board a pirate ship, and he's on his way back to Denmark. So he is shocked by this. He is astonished by this, and he's dismayed by this. And the reason for this is he expected that Hamlet would be on his way to England to be executed on his arrival, as I've just said, as Claudius has commanded the sealed letters to the English king. So very important. If you did not know that this is the context of his reaction, you would not have been able to answer this question. And that is why it is crucial that you know the play extremely well. Refer to line 29. Your sister's drowned, Laertes. Explain what has led to Ophelia's death. So once again, you need to be able to recall what has happened prior to this moment in order for you to answer this specific question. So remember, explain is to make clear the meaning of something by describing it in more detail. So, the point. Hamlet's cruel rejection of Ophelia, so his rejection, as well as his subsequent killing of her father, becomes too much for Ophelia's sensitive nature to bear. So the main two things that actually led to her death is the fact that Hamlet rejected her, and then also that her father was murdered. So let's explain and provide evidence. Her overwhelming grief and her inability to fend for herself cause her descent into madness. She inadvertently falls into a brook and drowns while trying to hang garlands of flowers on an overhanging willow tree. Now, the next question. Refer to lines 20 to 23. But let him come. It warms the very sickness in my heart that I shall live and tell him to his teeth, thus didst thou. Is Laertes' behavior in these lines, so in this specific moment, consistent with his behavior elsewhere in the play? So is his behavior similar to these lines when we look at other examples from the play? Motivate your response. So, the point here, so we're saying, yes, it is, right? So, in pink, so the point here refers to Laertes' behavior in this situation. So you firstly have to look at how he's reacting within this situation. And then the evidence and the explanation elaborate on his past behavior and his future behavior. So for 3 marks, the best way to approach this question would be, firstly, to look at this place, as we can see here, and then to look at past behavior and to look at future behavior. So, he displays similar behavior when he rushes back to Denmark, heedlessly encouraging mutiny when he thinks that Claudius is responsible for killing his father. So this is in the past, right? So this all is related to the past. Claudius is responsible for killing his father. Now, later, when he learns that it is Hamlet who has killed his father, he blasphemously states that he would even kill Hamlet in the sanctity of a church. Then, so this also relates to the past, and now here, with the furthermore, right, we are now dealing with the future. Furthermore, he readily agrees to Claudius's treacherous plot to kill Hamlet without considering the consequences. Lastly, he aggressively brawls with Hamlet at Ophelia's graveside. So from the furthermore to the ending, we are dealing with the future. Now, using extract F as a starting point, so we have to start with this extract. Comment on the portrayal of women as presented in the play as a whole. So you are using the extract as a starting point and then looking at how the women behavior throughout the entire play, or how they behave throughout the entire play. Take note that the reference to women in the question is plural. There are two female characters within this play, and they are Ophelia and Gertrude. So for our answer, we must refer to both. Okay, so thus you must refer to more than one female character in your comment. Look closely at the diction used within the question. So, Ophelia's death is a reminder of how dependent women are on men. So this is a point. So now we are explaining Ophelia, right? So as you can see, we have now separated our answers. So firstly, we're going to look at Ophelia and we're going to explain the ideas of Ophelia, and then we're going to look and examine Gertrude and explain Gertrude. So Ophelia's death is a reminder of how dependent women are on men. Ophelia, and now the evidence and the explanation, experiences a sense of abandonment after Hamlet's rejection and Polonius's death. This, coupled with Laertes' absence, leaves her vulnerable and she succumbs to madness. Her entire life has been controlled by her father. Gertrude, too, follows the dictates of men in her life. Her hasty marriage is evidence of her reliance on men. She supports Claudius's decision to spy. So she supports Claudius's decision to spy on Hamlet and to send him into exile. Women, so this is a general remark, are portrayed as submissive and obedient. So 3 marks only if a comment is evident. So once again, let's quickly look. We've looked at the character of Ophelia first, and then we've looked at Gertrude, because women, the E, indicates to us that it is plural. Now, that is enough of Elsinore and the wickedness that ensues there. Let's take a quick commercial break, and then let's wrap things up when we come back. Welcome back. Now, let's quickly revise some of the key aspects of this lesson. This is what we did in terms of the CAPS curriculum under reading and viewing. Then, this was how our lesson developed. Firstly, we looked at drama terminology. Then we did a basic analysis of each of the dramas. Then we were taught how to approach the various questions. Then we learned various answer techniques. Now, let's look at the keywords again. Evaluate the effectiveness means to examine the pros and the cons of the issue and make a judgment of the statement in the question. Comment on the appropriateness means to examine the quoted lines or statement and then express your opinion or reaction based on your understanding of the play. Comment on the significance. Examine the quoted lines or statement and then explain its importance in your understanding of the play. Account for, to give a reason for the statement in the question. Critically discuss, to weigh up the strengths and weaknesses of an idea or statement and examine it in detail. Critically comment, to make logical connections and offer your own perspective based on a thorough evaluation. Validity, to determine how truthful a statement is in order to assess its credibility. And justify, to give reasons to prove how reasonable a statement is. Here were some of the common errors made in the writing of paper 2. Lower order recall questions such as place the extract in context were poorly answered, since candidates were unable to identify the context of their extracts. Many learners did not read the questions in their entirety, so the entire question, and the precise requirements of the questions were often ignored. Questions that invited learners to discuss how certain lines influence their response or attitude to a character were poorly answered. Learners' limited vocabulary meant that certain words were misunderstood, and the responses were not appropriate in the context in which the words appeared. Many learners use language carelessly, so remember to capitalize proper nouns, to use the correct punctuation when quoting and when referring to the title of the drama. And also remember that the apostrophe has two functions, either contraction or possession, and you must use it. Then, in some cases, basic plot details were not known and characters were incorrectly identified. This would suggest that candidates had not read the prescribed text. There was an over-reliance on summaries and film versions of the text. So, I repeat, do not watch a film adaptation of the play because it often would not be textually accurate. And secondly, do not rely on summaries that you get online. Please remember to read the texts thoroughly. These are some of the skills you would need to write your Paper 2 examination. Now, to practice further, you may go and find these past papers. The NSC May-June Supplementary Paper for 2024, the November 2023 Paper 2, the NSC May-June 2022 Supplementary Paper, as well as the NSC November 2022 Paper 2. I really hope that you have enjoyed today's lesson and that you have been equipped with skills to write your final English Home Language Paper 2 examination. Thank you for going on this journey to Venice, Denmark, and Salem with me, and good luck with your final examinations.